Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This week we're going to be talking about 6 and 7, as mentioned in the weekly announcement. But I'd like to start with 6. 6 gets into some new types of things that fall outside of the medical surgical section. So I want to kind of introduce those to you right now. And again, as discussed, we'll be getting outside of the medical surgical section. So we'll be dealing with things that are dealing with administration, transplants, and some other things. And again, your code book, your PCS code book defines these things, but as they'll explicitly spell them out. But it's really important to kind of know what some of these things are. Aspiration versus a biopsy. A biopsy, depending on what they're biopsying, can have a root operation of either an aspiration, a drainage, or an excision. And then it will always have the seventh character that says it's done for diagnostic purposes. Aspirations are different than other types of biopsies, and aspiration is basically taking or letting fluids or gas come out of a body part. We also do biopsies, as we know, by excisions, where we're cutting out part of something. Bone marrow biopsies we think of as a biopsy, but it's when you get down to the root operation level, it's an extraction of bone marrow. It's not an excision in the same way that a shave biopsy is. Bone marrow transplants are coded as transfusions because it meets the definition of putting in blood or blood products. And that's confusing for a lot of people. And that's all I have for you. Please answer the questions and review how you're going to get to some of these terms. What you may want to consider doing is to look them up in the index and then bookmark them with a post-it note. So when you go to take that quiz or code these procedures, you'll be ready to go. Thanks so much, and we'll see you online. Bye now.